Boneyard got started through James actually had it written. It's one of his initial scripts. When I first met James, he let me read some of his ideas and scripts, and I knew how creative he was, and I wanted to be part of that. That mix of putting things together to make things happen and entertain people. So he had the Boneyard. It was already written for someone else, but we worked together. We did all these special effects so that he could also continue other scripts and get more material so that we could have more than one script out. But the Boneyard seemed to be the one that was catching at the time. He had made some contacts with Corey Films, Marie Hoy, and they got along really well. He introduced me to Marie, and then from my end, I started talking to her, and she was looking for scripts and ideas, and the Boneyard was there. They read it. She then introduced us to our executive producer, who actually worked for her in sales, Jeff Sanfilippo. Jeff and I then teamed up with me as the producer and him as the executive producer, and we had decided we'd do the Boneyard under a limited partnership. And this is something that I'm very familiar with. Being a producer is just a title over putting anything together, even for the city. You still do things under partnerships and limited partnerships, so all of it just under a different title works. So we did. We started putting it together. And if you've never put a limited partnership together, don't start. It is the hardest way to finance a film, because you need to get an attorney, you need to draw it up, and then you need to find investors. You put it out there, just like an offering. And between Jeff and I, and we put it out there, and of course most of the investors, since he's the executive producer, in fact all of the investors are his friends and family, because he knew he could put this together. But he needed the experience of a good producer to execute it. And that's where I came in. So we rounded up 18 investors and then locked them in. But it took, 2 years to do that, because you get one investor and then you get another one, and then this one falls out. So you got to find somebody else to replace him. And it's just a vicious circle. And you need to get the amount of money that's set forth in the limited partnership. In that case, we had $950,000 to do this. And we signed the papers, got it going, and off to North Carolina. We chose right from the beginning to shoot it in North Carolina for the rights, because it's a right-to-work state. I could get the use of good union people mixed with some good non-union people. And it worked. It worked. We got it financed. Most of the people came aboard because of the cast that we put together. The Ed Nelson, the Phyllis Diller. Primarily Phyllis. Phyllis was really the key. These were older investors. They come from old money. And they just all loved Phyllis Diller. And so she really made it happen for us.
And once you have the financing, can you talk a little about, as a producer, what it took to budget the Boneyard, about budgeting?
Right. To budget a picture, you need to lay it out. You need to know you need to read the script. Once you read the script, it tells you what you need. It tells you how many locations. It tells you how many cast members, how many principals, how many extras. All of these need to be budgeted so that it lays out the format for your budget. Then you can start going and finding locations and getting particularly a location scout to find you some, and within the budget range, because only a certain amount of money out of your budget that you have, in this case we'll say $950,000 or $1 million, you need to say only a quarter of that or less goes for locations. So you need to find those. So much is allotted for cast, so much is allotted for makeup. And if you have special makeup effects, as we did in the Boneyard, you need to make sure that you allot enough money for it, because they do tend to run expensive with all of the process that has to go through, and the crew that has to be. They have a 3 to 4 month lead time into doing special effects for most films.
So if you were to talk about the process of fundraising, funding a film, I mean, from there are probably several ways of going about it. You've mentioned, a limited partnership. But what is that? What is that process to approach a person, ask them for their money? How do you, what is that whole, someone who's starting off in film, I guess I'm trying to say, is to get that kind of mindset. I'm starting off in film. How do I even begin to approach people?
First of all, you have to have your whole concept together. Okay? One, you have to have your finished script, because whoever's going to fund your film is going to want to read it. Most people will want to read it. I don't think anybody, the investors in the Boneyard, I don't think they read it. But we'll say 95%, they will read your script, and they will have to catch that. But once you have your script together and you have your budget, what you have allotted for every department, from makeup to design to sets to locations, then you take that and you present it into some sort of presentation. And like a good producer, you got to be like a car salesman. You got to be behind. First of all, you as the producer have to believe in your project. Okay? I don't take on a project that James writes unless I see what it is that he visually sees, and I agree with it. And in our case, we've done 3 films, and all 3 of them have been financed differently. So, as I mentioned, the Boneyard was financed under a limited partnership. That is the most difficult way. The second film we did, which was called Dark 30, was financed through a direct loan from a foreign company in England that wanted to get into the United States. So we were their sponsor. In order for us to sponsor them for coming into the States to make a picture, we got to make the picture. Okay? We put the script together. We put all the concept together, and they funded it. Okay? So that's just a marriage. I'm making a film. But it helped me in producing. It gave me the producing credits that I need, as well as, of course, the salary. And then the third film we did called Harbinger. Again, James wrote and directed all 3. I kind of like his personal producer because I like his material. I like what he presents. But Harbinger now was a co-production deal. I set up a co-production deal between another company and myself. They were new, and they needed, again, the experience of learning. So my advice in trying to find money is to, especially to a new person, because it's difficult. You're not going to get into the studios being a first-time producer. What happens is a lot of people tend to put first-timers in every position, and that then becomes a real hard sell unless you're funding it yourself. Because we were lucky, because when we did the Boneyard, I mean, really, James that was first-time writer, first-time director, my first time producing. But we had a distributor and an executive producer who were behind us. And that's really getting good if you can. That's the best you can get. And you keep, under the independent status, most of the creative control until it's done. Once it's done and turned over, then they take over. And as what can often happen is they can recut, they can make it longer, shorter, depending on what where they want to go with it. And as we look at it, or I do sometimes, it's my child, and you give it away, and there's nothing you can do. It's gone.
What was your collaboration like with the executive producer on the picture? What was that collaboration with the other producers?
With Jeff, there was only one, Jeff Sanfilippo. He was the executive producer, and he was also the managing partner of the partnership, the limited partnership. So he actually had the final control. Okay? My position on the Boneyard, as also one of the partners in the limited partnership, was to actually execute the budget, keep it under budget or on budget, and to execute it, to be there to see that everything ran smoothly. And I'd like to say it did, but I'd be lying. I'd be lying. On anything, you have your ups and downs. I mean, they're just going to happen. We went over by a week. When you do that, you got to go back to make sure that you have the money for it. In our case, we had the contingency that was there to cover that week. So, and a lot of first-timers don't have the contingency, and it can hurt them.
So now let's take that and take it to the next place where now your experience on the set, where you're now in production. Although all this continues, but how is your collaboration now with James on the set, or with the other actors on the set? The experience of now filming the movie.
That's the fun part. That's when the producer either gets really easy, or because everybody has demands from the executive producer demanding that we stay under budget, from the director who wants more shots than that were listed, to actors who want to constantly change things. And as a producer, you just have to like tap dance. But the end result is my director. My director getting what he wants. And I treat, I think, any director. I mean, James is probably one of the best. You give your director what you can. If you can squeeze an extra shot, if you can give him something that he's asked for, you want to do it. You know, and any producer should lean to try to get that, because it can only enhance your picture. But there are times it just won't happen. You just, as a producer, you just have to say no. You know, you can't have it. It's not in the budget, and you just can't have it. And that's to actors. They demand, trailers and cars, and just tell them no. It's just not there. But overall, as a producer, you try to stay in communication and calm. I try not to lose my temper. I don't often, and if I do, I usually close the door first, just get it out, and then go back and address it, because there isn't a problem you can't solve. There isn't a problem that you can't solve. It's a matter of just paying attention to it and getting it done. We luckily did not have a lot of problems on the Boneyard. We did run over a week, but that was mainly due to the effects. The effects take longer. Sometimes they don't work, and you just need to, and it holds up a day, or you got to go back and then shoot, or we shoot around it. We always have a contingency on shooting schedule, because you try not to lose time if you can help it.